Hey folks, we're about to start another episode of Ask Us Anything about electrochemistry. But before we begin, because we have some extra time, there are a few things I'd like to go over first. While we're waiting for the live stream to start, type your question into the chat. The sooner we get your question, the sooner we'll be able to answer it when the live stream starts. We usually try to answer questions in the order that we receive them, but it's definitely possible that we get so many questions that when your question comes up, we're out of time. If you are a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 YouTube member, you do get priority in us answering your question. You also have the opportunity to join us on the stream to either share slides or talk to us in person about your specific electrochemistry research questions. If you are a Tier 1 or Tier 2 member on our YouTube channel, you will find in the community post the link and password to join us on our broadcasting platform. We get a lot of questions about electrochemistry, whether it's through our YouTube comments, webinars, email, phone conversations. We get lots of questions from people about electrochemistry. And sometimes responding to a YouTube comment or trying to describe a cyclic voltammogram over the phone isn't always the easiest way to teach or describe electrochemistry. That's why we created this live stream. In the Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry live stream, you can ask us any questions you have about electrochemistry, and we can use better tools and take more time to describe some of these electrochemical processes to help you with your research and understanding of electrochemistry. Now, in our time of doing this live stream, we've observed that if you ask a very, very specific question, we might not be able to answer it. It'll be a little bit too specific for us. On the other side, if you ask a very broad question and you're interested in just a very broad understanding of cyclic voltammetry, we have separate tools, we have other resources to help you. So we do have a YouTube video on cyclic voltammetry, an introduction to the subject. And if you're interested in more of a long-form course on, say, electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, we have a 5-part EIS webinar series for our Tier 2 YouTube members that you can access at any time. Now, if you weren't aware, Pine Research Instrumentation is a company that produces a wide array of high-quality electrochemical research equipment, from potentiostats to electrodes, electrochemical rotators, cells, different types of accessories. Pine Research has been supporting electrochemistry research and teaching for decades. Recently, we have developed new electrochemical simulation software called Aftermath Live. Aftermath Live is an online streaming platform where you can simulate popular electrochemical techniques like cyclic voltammetry. It's a powerful research tool, as you might simulate a cyclic voltammogram to support an electrochemical mechanism for your redox reaction that you're studying. But Aftermath Live and cyclic voltammetry simulation is also a very powerful tool when it comes to just learning electrochemistry. In fact, in previous episodes of the live stream, we have used Aftermath Live and our simulation software to answer some of the questions that you have. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can get a 10% discount on your first month of the basic and research editions of Aftermath Live by using the coupon code PINEYouTube10 when you're at checkout. Aftermath Live is a powerful tool and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Go to aftermathlive.com to check it out. Link is in the description below. Our live streams are normally on Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. They normally last about 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. If you miss the live stream, you'll always be able to watch it on our YouTube channel, and in the description we put timestamps for every question that was asked. This way you can look through the description and find the questions that are most relevant to your research and then watch those at your leisure. Also, we apologize in advance if we mispronounce your name. If on a YouTube channel you can put anything you want as a name. It could be a Pokemon, it could be a string of numbers. But if we call you out and we accidentally mispronounce your name, we apologize in advance. Lastly, please do not spam the chat. We've had numerous instances of people either talking about inappropriate things or constantly filling the chat up with some kind of spam. We will remove you if you do that. Let's keep the chat very clean and just talk about electrochemistry. Sometimes it takes a while before we're able to answer your question. So if you keep typing your question into the chat and spam the chat, then we will remove you from the chat. But if it's been a while and we may have forgotten about your question, one message as a gentle reminder is all that's required. All right, I think that's all of the housekeeping things. Now, let's start the live stream.
Hello. Yeah. I was like,
No jinx. No.
Who's gonna talk first?
Yeah, I was gonna talk first.
Isn't that the thing? Do you ever do that when you were a kid? You were driving down the street,
Mhm.
or well, you weren't driving because you were a kid.
Yeah.
But and then did you ever do the thing where you'd see a headlight, you have to hit the ceiling of the car? Was that a thing? Did you ever do that? Or was that
No.
was that a weird me thing?
No.
Was that a weird my friend group thing?
I think that may have been your friend. Not to say that my friend group
Was
Had-
not weird.
had
right?
like normal things. It's like, nah, I'm pretty sure we had our own things of where like, no, we're the only people who do who do this.
There was
This
always
is
the
not a
jinx
normal
thing if you'd say something at the same time.
Yeah.
And then there was a thing where if you saw, it was like it was a headlight was missing. That's what it was. If a car coming at you was missing a headlight, you had to punch the ceiling of the inside of the car. I don't mean like punch through it like
Well,
the
yeah,
Hulk,
yeah,
and like
yeah.
you know, like a crazy person. Though this is sounding crazier the more that I go, but I'm already in it, so I'm gonna keep going. I have no choice but to go through.
The floor is lava
That's-
is something that's I think universally
That's
known.
programmed into children.
Yes.
And that's like a human default programming.
Yeah.
Like there's no child that grows up without the floor is lava. It's like buying the, Nintendo system and there's Tetris on it or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
that's
like
right.
it's
built in.
built-in programming, and there's nothing that you can do about it. The floor is lava,
The floor is lava.
and Daniel Tosh has a joke like that. He's just like, that meant that you were poor growing up. It's like you'd be like, Mom, I want a PlayStation. She's like, the floor is lava. He's like, what the hell is wrong with our house? I don't know what's going on, but I have to step on the pillows now.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, welcome to another episode.
That's
Ask
right.
us anything about electrochemistry. We got
Or
a couple
about car
questions.
headlights.
Or about car headlights.
Or the floor being lava.
I don't know if we'd be able to answer that many questions.
There's
about
another
that.
great joke by Mitch Hedberg. He's like, I know a lot about cars, man. I can look at a car's headlights and tell you exactly which way it's going.
That's good. All right. So first question that we have, Rebecca Stanley is asking, any thoughts on using DRT method, distribution of relaxation times, to deconvolute EIS spectra with overlapping processes? I think it's a great way to deconvolute EIS
that's exactly
spectra.
that's exactly what it's good for. So I don't have. I know there's a tool. There's like a DRT tool.
Yeah,
whatever.
drttools.com.
Yeah. It's you've talked about it before. It's pretty nice. It's free and it's pretty useful, but it's a little tricky. You have to have everything in the right format.
Mhm.
It won't always work if you don't, but it's kind of nice. DRT I've talked about before. Mathematically, it's a very interesting and kind of tricky algorithm. I have had personally my own trouble like figuring out how like wrapping my head around it. Like I have programmed like Kramer's Kronig and even circuit fitting and circuit diagrams and things like that. Like I've done coding and tried to do stuff, and like DRT is just I for some reason just mathematically it kind of escapes me to be able to like wrap my head around it. I'm not like a trained mathematician per se. The website's like it's drttools.com. Is that what it is?
Yeah, drttools.com.
drttools.com.
Yeah, I can.
Or maybe it's .org or .edu. I don't precisely know. Alex will find it,
I'll throw this into the chat.
Yeah, take a look at it if you want. What I can say about it are a couple of things. So, despite the fact that mathematically, it kind of, like I said, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. I do know about it from a practical perspective, and that is a couple of things. So one is that, like you said, Rebecca, when you have multiple processes that are occurring with similar time constants, so a lot of times that means similar capacitances, but we're sort of saying the same thing here. So if you have like a bunch of RC processes um, that are occurring with roughly the same time constant, a lot of times they will not be easily differentiated. So I'll just draw a little bit. I see there's some other questions coming in. I'll make this quick because I'm not gonna use the tool or go in too much depth about this. But let's say your Nyquist plot looks something like this. Okay. The simple circuit you would want to fit is something like this, right? This is like Randall's circuit, very simple. All right, perfect. Well, let's say you thought to yourself, or you knew because of some other intuition, that there's actually here, there's 3 RC processes actually occurring. And it's like you have like 3 semicircles that kind of all like overlap. And so they end up looking like one semicircle. And it's really hard to fit, for example, this circuit, you know, whether you have a Warburg element or not. Basically, you could imagine having a bunch of these RC elements to fit. The problem isn't really, I shouldn't even say it that way. The problem isn't going to be that your algorithm can't do it. It probably can. The problem is going to be it's not going to be unique values. The values for these R's and C's could be almost anything, and this will fit, because it's a non-unique solution. So DRT is a way to deconvolute this kind of situation where regular circuit fitting and regular impedance doesn't really give you this answer. Now, here's the tricky things and the limitation about DRT. DRT fundamentally fits this model right here. I mean, I drew 3 of them. I could have drawn just 2, 1, whatever. But the point is, it's an infinite kind of sum, basically, of RCs. Okay. It does not include Warburg. It does not include capacitors by themselves. It does not include capacitance that's not part of an RC. Okay. So what it's doing is it's not assuming that this is like a fit. What it's doing is it's a mathematical, it's like Kramer's Kronig. It's a mathematical representation of your impedance data as a semi-infinite, or I guess infinite, sum of RCs, resistor capacitors in parallel. Okay. What that does not account for is this kind of behavior. Basically, if the y-axis is really large in comparison to the x-axis, if you have a lot of negative imaginary, a lot of minus Zi, if your data is very capacitive, like this, any of that is happening, you cannot do DRT. Fundamentally, it's a violation of its the assumption of the tool, essentially. So you could isolate your data to where you can think about it this way. It's kind of a rule of thumb. You can kind of isolate the data to where it's close to the x-axis, to where the data is closest to the x-axis. So you could do DRT on like this part, but you will get, I mean, whatever peaks the DRT will start to show for something like this will be meaningless, because there's no Warburg element. There's no capacitance by itself. Are you showing a picture that we did before?
Yeah, like we talked about this, and it was
captured.
It was captured very eloquently by the following.
Okay. So here, I'm done talking about that. Alex has a very important picture.
In a previous webinar, we talked about DRT, and this just perfectly describes when
because I drew smiley faces and frowny faces
in the exact areas where like you don't want to do DRT and where you do want to do DRT. Right. And I kept this.
I'm very glad you kept this. I saw you looking at this picture. I was like, oh, that's right. I did this before.
You did this before.
But I didn't draw smiley faces this time. So in summary, Rebecca, that's the point I want to make. So whatever you feed into the tool, you need to make sure that it's mostly not capacitive or diffusional. DRT does not, it should not be used to interpret data of that nature. But if you have data that is appropriate, you can get multiple, peaks, and each peak can be an indication of an independent charge transfer process or RC you're looking for multiple peaks where the actual data only showed one semicircle, for instance. You might get 2 or 3 peaks, and that would be an indication of multiple processes. So that's about as much as I can say on it. I can't give you more mathematically, but hopefully the tool will help you use it.
Yeah. All right, just moving on. Next question. Can you please give a broad idea how to use RRDE for electrochemical water splitting as well as CO2 reduction? Yeah, sure. I think what I can at least do is give you a broad sense, maybe very broad. I think each research group does a variety of different things when it comes to using RRDE for actually what I would describe, generally speaking, as electrocatalysis. So if I just share my screen, I'm just going to draw something very we always draw crude, rudimentary things.
I also have this animation. This is a
oh yeah, why don't you
collection
just,
efficiency one.
You just share your screen. That's
well,
the better way
I wanted you to maybe talk about CO2 reduction, possibly. Go ahead and continue if you want. I can show this after when you're.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted
to
let you know I have some animations maybe.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to draw anything super special, but like let's just take a RDE for example. A lot of people, if this is like a glassy carbon disc electrode. Some people will put like a catalyst on it. This is a heterogeneous catalyst. It's like bound. It's like on the surface. And as you are, and normally, people, if you do CO2 reduction or water electrolysis, if the CO2, for example, is here, the CO2's got to make it to the electrode surface to actually do, say, the reduction reaction. The RDE allows you, because it's rotating and it's driving solution towards the electrode surface, it overcomes this mass transport problem. So oftentimes what people will do is they will put a catalyst on a disc electrode. They will bubble CO2 into a solution, and then they'll rotate it while applying a negative bias. And they'll get some interesting, RDE data. Maybe they get some limiting current like this as a function of the rotation rate, and they can determine how efficient their catalyst is or how effective it is for reducing CO2. When you have a ring, and this is something when it comes to CO2 reduction that's I think not as well known or described. So normally when you have a ring electrode, and the ring, it's hard to draw it on here, but you'll have a ring electrode on the kind of on the outside. I know it's not here, but because this is like a thick picture. But ideally, when you have a ring or some other a secondary electrode, the idea is that as it's rotating and as reactions are occurring on the disk, you can bias this ring at a different potential. So maybe this is at E2, and the potential here is at E1. Then, or actually in this case, this would actually be sweeping. So maybe this is actually doing like a linear sweep or something like that. If you hold the potential of the ring as species, maybe you have some kind of intermediate, and that intermediate from the disk will make it to the ring and undergo a reaction. So all of a sudden, you may end up seeing some kind of, let's say, it's an oxidation of some species, and you may get some current that actually is due to an intermediate that's forming. So the rotating ring disc electrode can be very valuable when it comes to, say, doing things like detection of intermediates. It's mostly used for, say, the oxygen reduction reaction. But if you have a CO2 reduced process, maybe you reduce CO2 to CO, but then you're able to oxidize the CO on platinum or gold or some other material, you can detect that intermediate. So you can perform some mechanistic studies. The last thing I'll mention is some people have actually measured kind of OCP at the ring, and they've actually correlated the OCP to something like the pH, the local pH at the electrode. So instead of the pH being something that's like, oh, the bulk solution has a pH of 7 or 5 or 10, the local pH at at the electrode is actually changing, because you can imagine with CO2 reduction, you'll have things like formic acid, or bicarbonate. You may have some things that locally change the pH in this region that also gives you insight into mechanistic information. So those are the things I wanted to say. Like, oh, you just asked, generally speaking, a broad idea about how the RRDE can be used for water splitting and CO2 reduction. Those are the main things. Putting a heterogeneous catalyst on it, detection of intermediates, you can even use it to determine like rate constants from the RDE or RRDE. And then possibly some people have used it to measure things like the local pH through changes in the open circuit potential of the ring. So there's some papers on that. All right, I'm just going through.
Do you want me to show?
Oh yeah, you can still show. You
me
can show
this,
the animation.
yeah,
that
there's
might be
there's
helpful.
an animation I have about, just might help visualizing what Alex was drawing a little bit with the ring disc electrode. This is about specifically a quantity called collection efficiency, which describes how effective essentially the ring and disc are, or how effective the ring is at detecting from the disc. But this is what a rotating ring disc electrode looks like from the bottom. So you have your disc here, you have a separator between the ring and the disc, and then this is the ring. And so in this case, we're spinning our electrode. This is what happens. So whether this is CO2, like Alex was just showing, or if it's water splitting, you're flowing water basically to the disc electrode. And depending on what potential you bias, so in this case, if you're doing like the oxygen reduction reaction, and if it's a negative potential, this would be like the hydrogen evolution reaction, whatever it is that you're doing, you are reacting at the disc, the whatever you're trying to do, basically, right? I bring up oxygen reduction, which is like the other way of water splitting. It's like it's the opposite of the oxygen evolution reaction. But the reason why I bring up oxygen reduction is because it's one of the main functions of using a ring disc electrode. The reason is that when you put oxygen, if the blue is oxygen and the pink is the product of the oxygen reduction reaction, that product is either water or peroxide. And so what you have is a situation where the products are then swept away, and you bias the ring at a certain potential to basically make it go. You can do any of a number of things, but it's a collection kind of an activity. So the ring will show a potential, or excuse me, a current, if this pink dot hits it. And so if that pink dot goes over the ring and hits it, then I get a current because it goes back to blue. It goes from pink to blue, basically. But if the pink, product doesn't hit the ring, it doesn't go there. So that's what collection efficiency is about. There's a percentage of it that hits and a percentage that doesn't. But fundamentally, the point of the RRDE in the terms of water splitting or oxygen reduction is that if you can, what you're doing is you're using the disc to do the reaction of interest, and you're using the ring to determine how effective it was, because the ring can have a secondary electrochemical verification that the process that you were looking to do happened, basically. So hopefully that kind of just, gives you a little more visualization of that process.
All right. Nice. Yeah, that was good visual clarification. Nice animation.
It's better than either of us can draw. That's why I use these tools too, because I am also woefully terrible at art. So,
all right. Next question. Several methods exist to characterize an electrochemical system, such as SC or battery, EIS, CV, or GCD. How is the choice of the characterization method made for the same parameter? That's a very good question.
So I assume supercapacitors what SC is.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh.
Several methods exist to characterize. How is the choice of characterization method made? Well, there isn't really a choice. They're all used. CV a little less so in batteries, for instance, but this isn't really.
But is this like a question like determine the diffusion coefficient? Well, you can use EIS or CV to determine the diffusion coefficient.
That would be a good like sub question.
Mhm.
If your question is just which of these methods should I use, I'm trying to say this in a kind way. That isn't the right question to ask. It isn't, if you have a battery or a supercapacitor and you're thinking to yourself, I want to characterize this electrochemically, why would you not do all of them? Like what would, I mean, unless you have like 9 minutes before the power runs out in your potentiostat and you have to pick one of them or something. You know what I mean? Like that isn't, and perhaps you mean this question in a different way. So please feel free to like reword this if there's something else, I guess. But there isn't a choice. Just do you when you're doing electrochemical characterization of a supercapacitor or a battery, you're probably going to do, you might do CV, you might not do CV, but for a variety of reasons, but you'll do impedance, you do galvanostatic charge discharge. You do all of them. So anyway, I don't think this is necessarily an either or question. If you have a specific question about any of these, methods in
Or
those contexts,
or maybe describe what you mean by for the same parameter, because maybe that's also where we're getting caught up in the question. Because you're just like how is the choice of characterization made? And it's like, well, you can just do all the characterization methods. But when I saw the for the same parameter, I thought she was talking about you can get a value. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking like, oh, you can get solution resistance many different ways. Why pick EIS versus potential step? And we definitely know that in electrochemical techniques, you can get multiple parameters or multiple techniques can get you the same information. Like they can all get you diffusion coefficients. They can all get you
that is true.
Areas of electrodes or something like that. So I don't know if that's what her question is, but maybe we need more clarification.
Please clarify if you can, if there's something else. But like I said, you probably are right. I'm probably reading it more literally, and it might not be exactly what was meant. But again, my interpretation of this question was like, which one should I do? And it's like, well, all of them. You don't have to. Maybe that's helpful. Maybe that's the answer that would help you. Like if you're thinking about like, well, what should I do to characterize my system? Like, don't limit yourself. As well as a researcher, like you might learn something slightly different from all of these techniques, whether it's a battery or a supercapacitor. So use all the tools in your research electrochemistry tool belt, like Batman. Trying to climb a wall or take on a villain, or this is a terrible analogy, but just use all the tools in your tool belt. GCD and EIS and CV and everything. Do it all. Do everything.
Do everything.
That's right. So anyway, I hope that kind of helps a little bit. And if you have, if you're still here and you have a follow up or you want clarification, just let us know. We'll move on for now.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Oh, all right. So I did get a message from Sanyo about answering his question, because he did want me to actually answer his question or talk about it live. Okay. So I guess I'll go.
Yeah, we can do that. Also, I just wanted to mention it looked like Sushanta had a PAX file he was sending us. He sent it through email. It was blank. So I just messaged in the chat to say, I gave you a cloud link. I saw a file enter and then leave like twice. I assume you're looking at it and trying to, I assume, Sushanta, if you're still working on getting the file, just let me know when you have it, or if you can. I'm happy to look at your data. If I can comment on it live, I will. I'll try to let you know something about looking at if there's some spikes in your CV or the RU or whatever. I'm happy to look at that, but try to provide me the file if you can. So anyway, now you can, if you want to do the counter electrode thing.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking to see whether I may already have a presentation that talks a little bit about counter electrodes. Nope, not that one. So
at this point, the number of presentations we have is,
I know we have a lot.
It's absurd. It's quite absurd.
Yeah, am I getting there? No, I think I'm still very far away from talking about. Okay, so I'll just talk about talk about, although now after going through two of them, I think I know where it actually is.
Mm.
Son is asking, can you tell me about the science behind choosing the counter electrode? In this case, I've seen people use platinum or carbon-based counter electrodes, and I think there's one more place where I think I have a presentation that should go over the counter electrode and why we choose a counter electrode. Okay, and yep, I got it. So, all right. So now I'm going to share this screen. Here we go. Okay, so I was talking about counter electrodes one time within the context of a 3-electrode system. So in your counter electrode, so remember the purpose of the counter electrode is if you have some kind of working electrode and you have a counter electrode, you just kind of pass charge between the two of them. That's what they do. So if there's going to be a buildup of charge on the working electrode, there must be some kind of negative charge or opposite charge, and they must be equal and opposite. So if there's a lot of, say, positive charge growing on your working electrode, there must be an equal amount of negative charge on your counter electrode, and vice versa. So, and this isn't just on buildup of charge, but also it involves electron transfer. So if an electron is getting, say, oxidized, if you're losing an electron to the working electrode, you must also have the reduction occurring on, say, the counter electrode. So the purpose of the counter electrode ultimately is to complete the circuit, to balance the charge through your electrochemical cell. So the choice of materials that we use for the counter electrode is such that the oxidation or the reduction reaction is easy to perform. So when I was talking about this, I asked, what would happen if we use something like iron or lead as the counter electrode? And what would happen is lead and iron can rust or degrade over time, right? So this is just a picture of some iron that's like rusting, and that is why we used materials like platinum or graphite as a counter electrode. So when you have some, platinum in particular is very catalytic for redox reactions in water. And platinum and lead generally don't degrade in most solvents, and they have a lot of surface area to allow charge to pass. So these are all some reactions that could be happening at your counter electrode. This allows us, I don't have the electrons. Well, actually, no, I do have the electrons for these kind of half reactions. So these reactions will occur on the counter electrode, and they're easy to do on, say, platinum. Skipped a little bit forward. I was also mentioning another thing which is also useful, which is why would we want this electrode to be in a fritted tube? And that's ultimately because you are generating something at the counter electrode. If you're going to generate something at the working electrode, you're going to generate something at the counter electrode. So we sometimes use a fritted tube or an H cell to separate materials or reactions that occur on the counter electrode from the working electrode. So that's the gist of it. That's the only reason why we use materials like graphite or platinum, is because it's easy for them to undergo redox reactions and balance the charge in your electrochemical cell. Some people will use things like a sacrificial agent, for example. Sometimes they can't use platinum or carbon, or if they use carbon, it needs to go to a really, really large potential to reduce or oxidize something to have the charge balance. So if they added something, for example, if you're doing a reduction reaction on your working electrode, maybe you add a little bit of alcohol on the counter electrode side, and the alcohol can easily get oxidized. You don't have to oxidize water, which might be a little bit harder. So people sometimes do things like that to try and make the reaction occur in general. So hopefully, Sandra, that answers your question, and of course, that's kind of the science behind why we choose counter electrodes. So in the literature, you'll see platinum or carbon is used. Some of this has a traditional history to it, but that's the why. That's fundamentally the why we choose one over the other. And then you want a large area in comparison to the working electrode, because that's going to limit how much charge ends up getting passed. Okay. All
Whatever
right.
you said was great.
Thanks.
I was definitely not
Oh,
listening.
you're working on
I was working on the next
yeah,
person's thing,
yeah.
which is why it's great when one of us goes
Mhm.
on about a thing, the other one of us can ignore each other and work on the next thing. Anyway,
Don't tell them.
I know. We're showing them how the sausage is made.
Made. Okay.
Actually, I don't have a super good answer for this next question, but it is a good question.
Mhm.
Himanshu says, I have a question about photocurrent response. There are many patterns that are observed in a photocurrent response. What do they signify? And can there be a relationship between the photocurrent response and the amount of product, let's say hydrogen production, calculated from gas chromatography? So to your second question, probably.
Yeah.
That seems actually very likely, especially
Mhm.
if the photocurrent is in conjunction with a process like hydrogen generation, which it very likely is in the case of what you're studying, I suppose. But I guess this one's hard to answer. The first part of your question, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of patterns observed in a photocurrent response, and what do they signify? So first of all, I don't have like a ton of experience with photocurrents or photoelectrochemistry experiments. And then secondly, it's like, I mean, I'm a PhD electrochemist, so if I saw some plots or some representative data, I might be able to think some things through. But like, if you're just asking very generally, like, there's patterns that are shown, what do they mean? It's like I don't
Yeah.
know, because I don't know what those patterns are. I'm not sure
Mhm.
what you're talking about. All I can really do is just say that most probably the second part of your question, the answer is almost certainly yes. Um, in fact, I would hazard a guess that if you don't see any kind of correlation between the photocurrent, the data in some general sense, I guess, um, and the amount of hydrogen that's being produced, then the photo part of your photo electrochemical experiment is probably pointless. Like, I would assume that the light, excitation is contributing to the generation of your hydrogen gas or your whatever product. Like, why else
Mhm.
would you be shining light, right? I would make that assumption. That seems pretty safe to assume. So there most probably is some correlation there, and you would want to probably make some kind of um, either empirical or otherwise, relationship, I would say, between the quantity of product being produced, either through GC or MS or whatever, and the current response. That seems reasonable. You could use Faraday's law and say this is how many moles based on how many coulombs passed over a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
So in theory, this is how much product I should get, and correlate that with what your GC tells you. There's things that you can do of that nature
Yeah.
to determine how efficient it was, or what have you. But that kind of correlation, absolutely, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. In fact, that's actually exactly what you should do. You should
Yeah.
take the photocurrent over time, take the area, get the amount of charge,
Hmm.
and then using Faraday's law, correlate that again, considering the number of electrons that
With the
need to be and
stoichiometry.
the
Yeah.
stoichiometry of the moles of H2 that you're producing. And you'll often find that you'll have this is another definition in the photoelectrochemistry community for like Faradaic efficiency. So you're shining all
Was it
this light,
product divided by photocurrent expected product or something like that? Is that something
something
like
like
that?
that, because for example, you're shining light, but there may be other reactions that are occurring. So this happens in CO2 reduction all the time, because oftentimes the potentials and energy supplied to reducing CO2 could also go to making other products. So you may have, you're not going to have 100% conversion of your light to hydrogen, right? You may even find some thermal effects as well. So, but you're going to be able to, if you have two photo anodes, for example, right? You're shining light, they're doing a reduction reaction. Um, then you'll find that, oh, this you may need to add a catalyst to your system, right? So whatever your solution may be. So I've definitely seen people have a photo anode system. Usually it's P type with a reduction reaction, shine light, add a homogeneous catalyst and see whether or not their conversion through GC gives them more conversion of, say, the substrate water to hydrogen gas or something like that. So, but yeah, there's that relationship. There's usually a lot of other chemistry that's going on for those things. But yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah. Well, that's good elaboration.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a question by Amitav from LinkedIn here in
Mhm.
the middle. It says, when I do chronoamperometry, the current oscillates much mean the current starts. So he means the current starts from positive to negative pole and vice versa. How can I get rid of it?
I need to understand, like, the current oscillates, starts from positive to negative, like the value of the current. Like, if the current is positive and negative, that refers to either an oxidation or reduction reaction occurring.
Sounds like it's oscillating between oxidation and reduction current or something. That's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, especially for chronoamperometry, which is when you step the potential to
Mhm.
some level. It makes sense that initially your current, goes up and then it decays. That's the kind of normal response. But something else has to be happening for it to kind of do an oxidation, do a reduction, oxidation reduction. We also need to know what's the time scale of this process, right? Because you're looking at this over time. Is this happening on the microseconds time scale, or is this happening over like the seconds or hours time scale? We would need to know a little bit more about the system, and perhaps even more importantly, what exactly does the chronoamperogram look like? So we may find some interesting insights from that. So yeah,
Yeah.
to get a little bit of clarification.
So next, sorry. So next, Sushanta, I think I have your data now. So thank you for sending that through the cloud link that I sent you. I'll talk through your data a little bit here. This is with our Aftermath software. I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you some things within the software. Okay, so this is the data. You make sure that I'm sharing all right because I'm sharing my whole screen. I assume it's okay.
Yes.
Okay,
I
perfect.
will hide.
All right. So Sushanta, first of all, you took my advice. It looks like you increased the threshold for the phase angle to 30 degrees, it appears. And so you got your value of your resistance. It's about 62 ohms. All right. So the first thing that I want to say is that this is a red flag for this, whatever the system is that you're studying. And that is that the lowest phase angle that you're able to get is only 23 degrees, which means that even at high frequency, your system is quite capacitive. Keep that in mind because it's going to come into play in another couple of minutes or seconds or something.
Yeah.
Here's your voltammogram, and here's why you're concerned, right? There's some oscillation. All right. Well, here's one possible reason why your data is oscillating like mad. Okay. You've done a good job putting current range set. I didn't actually check. Let me check here. Microamps. You could possibly get away with using the 100 microamp current range instead of the 1 milliamp, but I doubt that that's causing any issue. 1 milliamp range is perfectly fine. Here's one of your problems. Don't pick the exact value for the cell resistance that you found. The closer that you get practically to compensating for the exact value of the uncompensated resistance, the more the system will oscillate, or the more likely the system will oscillate. It's actually perhaps a minor miracle that your system didn't oscillate completely out of control over the entire range that you did it. Do about 90%. So back this off by whatever, 3 to 6 ohms. So do 50 something ohms. Your results will be considered compensated, but you don't want to do that. Alex can talk about that a little more if you want. I mean, that's kind of one of your things about it. Like when you compensate, with the way the potentiostat works and its feedback loop, you don't want to compensate for 100% of the value. So don't type in 62.24. You can, especially if you did RU, the value was likely saved. I don't know if it shows up here. It might.
He didn't do any EIS, did he?
No, he did EIS. He
did
the
EIS.
RU. So you can see what here, your potentiostat saved the value. uncompensated resistance 62.24. It saved that value after you did EIS-RU. Once it found it, that value is saved. So actually what you can do, I'll just make a copy of this and just play with the values because this is the carbon copy. I can't do anything to it. So so what you can do instead is just come in here and do auto and pick 90% or 95%. So 90%, and then if you want to do RU again, whatever it finds will get stored in the software. And then whenever you run this, it will automatically take 90% of that value and do it. Okay. So that's the first thing. That could be why you're getting this kind of oscillation. It might be simply a compensation thing. Now, the other thing is that if you recall from at this point, maybe 2 minutes ago, when I said that your system is highly capacitive, it is very much something to be concerned about if your system never gets to like within 5 or 10 degrees, even at high frequencies. There could be reasons for this. Whatever the system under study, something with your reference electrodes could be kind of bizarre or unusual. It just means that overall your system is quite capacitive, and capacitive systems have a harder time being stable. There's a greater phase delay, there's a greater lag. And so these kinds of problems of oscillation and stability are going to be more pronounced at capacitive systems compared to resistive systems. For example, if your system was like just a resistor, you wouldn't have peaks like this. But if you had just mostly a resistor, you could never physically get it to oscillate. It would not be physically possible. A capacitor will oscillate at the drop of a hat. So the more capacitive your system is, the more prone it is to this kind of behavior. So I just want you to be aware of that. So you want to be really careful about that. And then finally, there's 2 other ways you can try to mitigate this kind of oscillation. One is with filters before the test. The other is with adjusting the data afterwards. So if you come in here, you went to the advanced tab to do this IR compensation, but you can come to the filters tab. You're not going to see real options here for me because I don't have a potentiostat connected. I didn't even notice it's a wave driver 200. Okay. Mm-hmm. So also I just noticed, I think you probably need to update. Nope, it looks okay. Your versions could be up. We have a newer version of everything, software and firmware, but what you're using is not that outdated. So come to the filters here. As a check, what you can do is click frequency. These are not the right numbers, but your wave driver, the lowest frequency, I think it's like 130 hertz, something like that. Mm-hmm. So pick from the drop-down list one of the smaller values. These are low-pass filters. Picking a smaller value. There could be some issues with the uncompensated feedback loop. I don't totally know, but in general, when you have noise like you're seeing oscillations, sometimes picking a lower frequency in your stability filter can help get rid of that. And then the last thing I'll show you, I'll just make a copy of this plot to show you, but we have smoothing filter features. So if like this data, for example, looks pretty good, there's just some oscillations, but overall, like it looks like behavior that looks like reasonable. You have a couple of peaks in either side or whatever. You can come here and go to transforms and smoothing. I'm just going to do one. There's all these options. There's polynomial, running average, Savitsky-Golay, smoothing. This is just an algorithm. You can play with some of these parameters. I'm not going to for time here. But if you have, for example, the desire to really smooth out your data, you can play with some of these, and some combination of these parameters or these algorithms might work better than others. But you can see, for example, the red line over the black one is the smoothed one. Now it's not perfect. It's still a little bit, which is again why you can kind of play with it yourself a little bit. But let me hide this trace so you can just see the red one. So a quick smoothing algorithm, and it kind of gets rid of all of that, but keeps the data, faithful to where it was, for instance. Now there's still some oscillation. So again, you might want to play with the values. A more aggressive smoothing might really get it better, but this is another way after the fact that you can consider smoothing your data. So hope that combination of things helps you out, Sushanta, for playing with your data there and kind of trying to fit it up or at least understand why you're seeing what you're seeing.
Okay. Well, I think somebody talked a little bit about the meme that we have right here. If we do EIS, what is it? If we do EIS versus reference on OCP, there is any difference. So
It's like they're begging me to get angry.
I know. Well, I guess we did put the meme up, so it
true.
is.
Did.
It's
almost
par
like
for the course.
I made a YouTube short on this. I just talked about this in my last webinar. I can't escape this question. No matter how much I clown on it, I can't escape it.
That's true. Well, we can either talk about it or talk about or we can tell them to go to I can put the link to the short,
Yeah, I have
which
a
is
whole YouTube
answered
short.
in a very concise way because it's short. And so let me add that, and then I will.
It's less than a minute, and hopefully it explains
some
logic behind the set point for your impedance experiment.
Yes. Okay. What's the
Where were
do
we?
we answer the Belgium company guy?
No,
I don't know.
I think that's next.
That's next.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so, based on
All right. I don't know what any of the acronyms mean, but
so vanadium redox flow battery, and then battery energy storage systems.
Okay, and we're going to company in Belgium, and we're Belgium's only official provider of vanadium redox flow batteries. The crisis in the world right now and the effect on energy prices. What do you think about vanadium redox flow batteries, or what is it, battery energy
storage systems? So it'd be like large scale batteries for storage. So I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of like market knowledge of vanadium redox flow batteries. I don't know how they compare to other energy systems, like favorably or unfavorably or price wise. There's certainly a place for energy storage in the world and in the grid, in a lot of countries and places. Speaking very broadly, I mean, it's hard for me to speak specifically because like every country has a different energy grid and every country has a different power generation scheme. It varies by country, it varies by region, it varies based on what the availability of resources. In the United States, we have a lot of energy availability. In Canada, North America, there's a lot. In South America, they have a lot. In Europe, there isn't quite so much. So a lot of European energy generation comes from natural gas or other sources imported from other countries and stuff. Like this is normal in the world, for instance. Now that we have in developed countries, for instance, not every developed country with an electrical grid has like ample natural resources to be able to produce electricity, so they have to find ways to do so. Like even in the US, like Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, which is out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, as far as I'm aware, they have to like get like tanker ships of oil brought to the island or natural gas or something like that to use in power plants to produce electricity for the island. Like there's no, there's only so many solar panels you can put to power, like Honolulu and the island of Oahu has like more than 1 million people on it. Like you just, as much as we want, that's the other thing about these systems. Like the tricky thing with battery energy storage systems or vanadium redox flow batteries is I think in certain situations for like, let's say smaller, housing developments or companies or smaller areas or individualized kind of areas where there's need, and you can use wind or solar energy to power some of those. You have to have something like a vanadium flow battery or a battery energy storage system or something of that nature, because as nice as it is to be able to use renewable or quote unquote green energy sources, they're intermittent and they're energy dilute. So you have to be able to store the energy for when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. So as a scientist, as in general. I love the idea of it. I love the research in any alternative energy source. I think it's tremendous. I like, it's fascinating from an electrochemical perspective. It's fascinating and relevant from a world energy perspective of helping, solve some of these energy crises and what have you. But I don't know that there's this one size fits all kind of solution. I think the mistake that sometimes we see from a scientific perspective is that people want to be like, well, how are we going to solve energy crisis, broadly speaking, or XYZ country's energy crisis? It's like, it's not that simple. It's just not. Like, people need, we need to, like, keep all of our options open, I think. And we need to be more open-minded about all kinds of research avenues and developments for different systems. So based on that very broad characterization, I would say that it's great to be a company, especially being the only one in Belgium, providing a technology like vanadium redox flow batteries. If you can fill a void or a need in your country or in that part of Europe, for instance, that's really great because, like I said, being able to have on-demand power when you're storing energy for when the other sources aren't providing, like the wind and the sun aren't shining and blowing, whatever. That's just the most obvious example. But being able to have these kinds of storage, or for backup power, whatever the case may be, is a good thing. And without having a lot of specifics on energy prices in different countries and everything, I'm very positive. If you'd say, you asked what we think about it, that's kind of what I think about it. I'm positive on just the general, like, research portfolio of humanity, especially electrochemically. I think the better we get with batteries, the better batteries get. The more we learn and improve the technologies, the better off we are for these very reasons.
No, I kind of I agree. I think one of the things I find most interesting or fascinating about energy and the use of, like, things like redox, flow batteries is it's just kind of the economics of, like, energy in kilowatt hours. And it's like, oh man, there's, like, orders of magnitude differences between, like, the price of per kilowatt hour of using a redox flow battery versus the price of energy just from, however, an oil company or a company, if you use coal or something, how much energy can you get out of it and how much are they charging you for it? And you're talking about, how this is going to affect energy prices. And sometimes it's like, unless the price of things goes like 10 or 100 orders of magnitude different, that's when, like, oh yeah, we have to use batteries for everything, or oh, we have to use vanadium redox flow batteries for everything. And then, as Neil said, like, certain things, they're niche, niche applications. It would be, it's kind of nice. It's like, it's really nice. I don't have to fill up my phone with oil in the morning.
You don't fill up your phone with oil?
I don't fill up my phone with oil.
I go to the gas station and I just, like, plug it in.
Yeah, just like,
and
right
all it
in.
does is spill gasoline on my phone. I might be doing it wrong.
Yeah, I might be doing it right. Or I don't have to put, like, a little, like, block of coal. Like, all right, you have to switch out the coal in my battery, or I got like a pull mower or something for my desktop. Like,
can you imagine doing that with your phone? Be like, hey mom, how's it going?
Yeah. Sorry, I can't hear you.
The motor's too loud. I can't hear you.
The motor's a bit too loud. Yeah. So it's like, there's just, I think, different, like, applications. And I think, batteries, different types of energy storage, work really well for some things, and they don't work well for other things. And there's a constant balance that we're trying to meet.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let us continue. I think we're on this question. I think there may have been a bunch of questions that came in, but This next question is, sir, my chemistry board examination gone well. Electrochemistry was simple. That's awesome.
Electrochemistry is simple.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
super
There's
simple.
nothing complicated about it at all.
Sir, my question today is, what is the process happening, electrolysis of salt water, the cathode and anode reaction? I mean, is hydrogen produced in the cathode? So
Ugh.
I think, this
Yeah,
is
and
just the water electrolysis.
an electrolyzer, hydrogen's produced at the cathode. That's correct.
Yeah, so that's just
I can show you.
two protons, 2 electrons goes to hydrogen, and then
I have
at
that-
least
I have that
with
animation.
salt water. Yeah, you have a whole.
I might as well
Yeah,
show my animation. Right?
might as well find another PowerPoint slide.
I don't have enough, you know.
You don't have enough PowerPoint slides.
I think it's in this
Duplicate PowerPoint slides
one. No,
that go over
there's
this.
so many. Yeah, I'll talk about an electrolyzer since electrochemistry is so simple.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Sorry, I'm just giving you a hard time. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
I hope it means
This is
that you're
simple.
very bright and you found it pretty easy, which hopefully that's what you mean. Okay, let me get to here. So with an electrolysis, we have a device called an electrolyzer that's often used, and it goes something like this. So this is for proton exchange membrane. So yes, the hydrogen is produced at the cathode. What we have is water. We send it at the anode. We have we apply power because it's a non-spontaneous. It's an electrolytic cell, hence electrolyzer. We have here the oxygen evolution reaction occurring at the anode. That is where water splits into oxygen, 4 electrons and 4 protons. The protons and electrons travel through either the external circuit or the membrane. And we usually flow some kind of carrier gas here, but we don't really have any fuel, strictly speaking, because at the cathode, the protons and the electrons gather back together and form hydrogen gas. So that's the electrode. That's the cathode reaction, I guess. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, and that's how it happens. So
nice. Next question. Through AIS, and you may need to get another PowerPoint slide.
I got it.
Through AIS,
give me a sec.
How should we calculate the diffusion coefficient of lithium or sodium ions for batteries? Now, granted, this is for batteries, but I think the calculation of a diffusion coefficient with EIS works for anything. So,
let me. I gave this in my webinar a couple weeks ago. What am I doing? I'm going to use. I guess I'll use this one. So, another set of slides. I have so many webinars.
Which is good.
At the moment.
This is very good.
So many webinars.
And you can watch these too if you, Neil's doing one right now for free. We have a whole archive of webinars on our YouTube channel for our tier 2 members. So
yes, this one's actually free for a little while longer because I gave it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
this is an excerpt from that webinar that I gave on Warburg elements. So the answer to your question for how can I calculate the diffusion coefficient from impedance for a lithium or sodium ion battery is it doesn't matter whether it's a lithium or sodium ion. It doesn't matter what the system is, but you're going to use a Warburg element. Now there's 2 types of Warburg elements, finite or infinite. So I'm going to speed through this and not give you a lot of the same stuff I give in the webinar. For that, you can watch the webinar. But what you're doing is you're fitting a Warburg element. So if it's an infinite Warburg, it'll look like this. There we go. I was getting to it. So if you have data that looks like this, right, with a tail at low frequency, then you can fit the infinite Warburg. And then what you're doing is you're going to do a circuit fit. Okay. And I'm actually not going to get into this A or B species thing because that's another kind of a complicating factor. What you're using is this expression right here. W is equal to RT over N squared F squared A, and then 1 over. Now, normally, let's just jump to the conclusion here. Normally, what we're doing is we're just neglecting one of these terms. Okay. See my webinar for more complex explanation of that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm neglecting one of these terms. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share instead. where is it? It's this one, I think. I hope so. You can see down here, just zoom in here. So when I get a W constant from my circuit fitting software, basically I'm just going to neglect one of these terms, and you can see I calculate the diffusion coefficient this way. So these are all constants. RT, you know the temperature is, you know the ideal gas constant, you know how many electrons were transferred, hopefully. Faraday's constant, surface area, bulk concentration, and then the Warburg constant. Now you have to be careful. I'll add a caveat here. Sometimes the Warburg constant, the way that the software defines it is that instead of it being here in the numerator, they define it being in the denominator. Or they'll put sigma, which I don't know how to write sigma very quickly. Sometimes they'll put like I don't know, QW or something. So whatever the software you're using calls the Warburg constant, just make sure you know what its units are, because that'll affect this expression. But basically, this is the expression you're using, okay, to calculate it. Now, the tricky thing is whether or not you have Warburg infinite or Warburg short. But you can do it either way, because with batteries, sometimes you get, and this is the last bit I'll show you. Sometimes you get data that looks like this with your 45-degree angle. That's infinite plane Warburg. So you're going to fit the W, the plane Warburg infinite. Sometimes you get what looks like this, where you have this kind of curl. That's a Warburg short. You're going to fit a Warburg short in there. Or sometimes you get this, where it goes straight up and down, straight up. And that's a Warburg open. Whatever Warburg behavior you observe, if you observe any of those three characteristic plots on, for example, your Nyquist plot, they all give you a Warburg constant. The finite ones have this extra term B, but the Warburg constant comes out of all of them, whether it's the infinite or finite. And so if you get a Warburg constant, then you can use this calculation to, what is it? One of these to calculate. It's the same one that I showed you. Just solve for D, right? From the other presentation. So that is how you do it from impedance. That's how you can calculate and determine the diffusion coefficient from impedance data.
All right. Let's see. Okay. We already answered this one. This looks like maybe we need more information on what are the parameters to decide whether our synthesized material will work as cathode or anode for supercapacitor and battery application. Isn't it just putting it into I mean, I think doing some CV on the material itself.
Well, first of all, those are also different things. Like a material, whether a material works as a supercapacitor depends on its capacitance. So you're going to either do CVs over a narrow range where there's nothing Faradaic occurring and calculate its capacitance. Q is equal to C times the capacitance times voltage, or current is equal to capacitance times scan rate. So you're going to just put it into an experiment and test it, right? Or you do impedance on it and measure the capacitance from circuit fitting with whatever the circuit is. If it's just a capacitor, if it's a resistor and a capacitor, whatever it is. I mean, that's the answer for supercapacitor. It's a little more complicated for a battery. Whether a synthesized material works as a cathode or an anode for a battery application is a little bit more of a tricky proposition. First of all, what kind of battery? And then secondly, not any material can work as a battery. I mean, to a certain extent, you could do the same logic and just construct a coin cell or something with your material slathered onto a piece of copper or aluminum to try to see if it works as a cathode or an anode. But I would assume that there was some foresight that went into play where you are testing the material as a battery, anode or cathode for a reason, because there's theory, almost nobody, I would think, just synthesizes some random, like they just grab a bunch of salts from their, lab cabinet, and they grab a bunch of solvents and they just mix it together. And if it doesn't blow up in their face, they get some material like, hey, I made something. Let's see if it's a battery. And they just throw it into a coin cell and just see what happens. Like, I don't know. That's not research. That's just random nothingness. Like that's what like a 5-year-old would do in the kitchen if you let them have access to your refrigerator. They would just start throwing sauces together and see what happens, right? Like that's not research. So to a certain extent, the answer is like, well, hopefully you've identified a material that in theory will intercalate or deintercalate, certain like lithium or sodium ions or something, or it will have a conversion reaction with said ions as a means of storing energy, because we have evidence for it, or we have theory that guides us. So that part of it, first of all, would lead you to want to put said material as a candidate for a cathode or an anode. And then once you've made that important designation first, then it's just seeing whether reality matches theory. I mean, that's the name of all like battery tests, for instance, is that you have a theory of like its capacity, like how many milliamp hours per gram does this thing theoretically can store? Because I know that, this material can do an alloying process with sodium metal or lithium metal or something, or a conversion reaction, or it intercalates or whatever. I have a theoretical amount of charge that it can store. And when I put it into a battery, how much charge does it actually store? I'm making that comparison. I mean, you could probably have a similar comparison with the supercapacitor idea, which is that, perhaps by theory, based on some, I don't know, some measurements that you can make based on its surface area, if you calculate its surface area, but its surface roughness, to, physical properties, you can estimate that it should have some capacitance. There might be a way to do that. And then when you put it into your system, you do some electrochemistry on it and you calculate its capacitance, you see if it matches theory. So I hope that kind of talks through this process, but it's kind of a general thing that you're asking, I guess.
I was just gonna say you should see if it does any redox chemistry in general.
Well,
Do you get a peek in the CV?
Yeah, do a CV. Do you get
do
a
a CV with the ion that you think might intercalate or react, and just see like, oh, does it actually react?
Yeah, there's that too. That's even before you make a coin cell. Does it even do the thing that it's supposed to do?
Yeah, does it do the basic redox chemistry first?
If I scan negatively, do I get any reduction current? Which would indicate that it's actually intercalating a material.
Yeah.
Or alloying or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That would be also a good idea.
That'd be a good idea.
Yes.
Let's see. Next one. What is the most important electrochemical testing technique for electrochemical sensing experiment?
OCP.
I was going to say, what's the most important electrochemical testing technique? Period. I'm like
OCP. Wait, CV.
CV.
Double step chronopotentiometry. Now we're just shouting out our favorite technique.
Yeah, that's right. It's like differential pulse now. Yeah, CV is like the most popular technique. Is it the most important? I mean,
for sensing.
I mean, some people use CV. Actually, square wave is used a lot for electrochemical sensing. Yeah. Square wave is one of the most sensitive techniques because it can remove things like electrical double layer capacitance.
Faraday. It can minimize Faradaic currents.
Yeah, background Faradaic current.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, and square wave is pretty fast. It gives you more like parameters to kind of adjust. Like with CV, besides the potential range, you can only change the scan rate or the sweep rate. But with square wave, you can change things like the pulse height, the pulse width, the kind of like a frequency, if you will. So there are a couple other parameters that you can adjust that can be advantageous when doing a sensing experiment. So, and that's what a lot of people use when they're doing like electrochemical biosensor stuff. But yeah, I think that's maybe the most important for electrochemical sensing. Other techniques, or other systems, not so much. Okay, all right, moving on. So there's another question about, can you talk about why we have a semi-permeable membrane in the gate electrode? Pine system CV setup.
Is gate electrode another word for reference electrode?
I'm not really so sure. We may have to ask some
Gate
a little bit
electrode is a
of
crucial
clarification.
terminal in transistors MOSFETs.
I'm not so sure.
I don't know what a gate electrode is. That just, I mean, is that a term
That sounds like a
people-
transistor.
Yeah, it is. It's a transistor term, I guess.
Yeah.
Semi-permanent in Pine system CV setup, and they said in the in
Oh.
the standard AgCl. Maybe he means reference electrode, and is that, I don't know, that might be a term people use in for reference electrode, but I just haven't heard people call a reference electrode a gate electrode. But it sounds like he's asking why we have a frit in a reference electrode.
Yeah.
That sounds like the question,
Sounds
just
like the question.
worded slightly differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know.
And if he's asking about like why pick a certain counter electrode, you know, I mean,
I'm guessing this is about the
maybe
reference
it's in
electrode.
the same vein of like why do we even have this for an electrochemical system?
I've been trying to get rid of it forever.
I know.
One of these days, I'm going to get rid of our need for reference electrodes. You just wait.
Just one of these days. People I don't doubt it. I think maybe we'll figure something
I'm
out.
going to take my Nobel Prize and you'll never see me again.
So the idea behind the reference electrodes is that it represents a stable reference point in your electrochemical system where the potential remains constant and you can measure things with respect to it. However, to do that, you can have something very stable, doesn't change, but it still needs to make contact, electrical contact, with the electrochemical test solution.
Let me just interrupt because the next question from Himanshu just is along these same lines. So you're answering two questions at once here.
Oh, how do I know if it's stable or not?
Using stable. So yes, you can sort of answer both of these questions at the same time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
I wanted to
yeah, let's do some, let's draw some stuff. So
let's draw some
stuff. Time to draw things. So basically, when you have a so let's talk about the frit for a minute. That was, I guess, part of the first question. So you have this frit, this kind of what he's calling a semi-permeable membrane, but it's a frit, and you have a wire. Sometimes there's some silver chloride or some other salt here, and this is a lead. This is your reference electrode, and the reference electrode, ultimately its potential is governed by this, the Nernst equation. So the Nernst equation, the potential of your reference electrode is governed by this guy right here. And we're able to maintain this value because this guy is a constant, and we lock these together. So we have a known concentration of either oxidized or reduced species, and it stays that way. It only stays that way because the composition of this electrolyte is a constant. And if we just had a glass cell with just a solution in it, then the potential of this wire remains constant. But we necessarily have to make electrical conductivity with, some other, another electrode in solution. And so ions have to move back and forth from within this frit. So that's the purpose of the frit. The frit allows us to have ionic conductivity. So I say ion conductivity. We conduct. And because without the ionic conductivity, the potentiostat wouldn't work. The electrochemical system wouldn't work. So ions must be able to flow, but you can't have them just leak out entirely. So what ends up happening is this membrane consists of usually nanoporous glass, typically, that allows the ions to flow, but not at such a rate that it's, the solution composition changes very quickly. And this also leads to stability. So the original question actually was about the stability, and the stability has to do with what this measured potential is. And that ultimately has to do with this activity of oxidized and reduced species. So this can change depending on how much the ions are moving back and forth, the difference in the concentration of these species between inside the reference electrode and outside the reference electrode. And so what you'll end up seeing, like how do you know whether or not your reference electrode or your system is stable, is you would do what's known as an open circuit potential experiment, OCP. And I actually talked about this in a recent video on open circuit potential.
Why don't I link that for everybody?
Yeah, people can see, how to test two reference electrodes. But if you put two reference electrodes or just a reference electrode and another, ideally two reference electrodes is what you want to do. You should observe that if I have two reference electrodes that are the same, and I kind of just like hook them up to say a voltmeter in solution, I have two reference electrodes, just gonna put them like so. If they're the same, the open circuit potential should be close to 0. Maybe you'll get some little deviations here and there, but it's ultimately very much close to 0. Maybe it'll be at like, maybe it's at plus 1 millivolt. Maybe you'll get this instead. But you'll observe drift. You'll know that it's not stable if this starts to change. Over time, this potential changes. It goes down or it goes up. This means it's not stable. Not stable. All right. And this means that it's stable, of course, over the course of your experiment. And it's almost impossible to get a reference electrode to be infinitely stable over an infinite period of time in your electrochemical system. So oftentimes that's a problem because some people are doing very, very long experiments, like maybe multiple days, and sometimes the reference electrode potential might shift. This is a challenge that researchers often face. So, but hopefully that helps you understand or learn more about the question. And I'd encourage you again to check out the video. That may also help you out as well. Okay,
I was just putting the link to your OCP video in the LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
Here as well. So this is OCP video on YouTube. Sorry, I was getting that going because it doesn't post it to only
that's
on
true.
YouTube from our little software there. All right.
Yeah.
Just getting that done.
So the next question, I'm conducting half cell HER characterization for molybdenum-based Raney nickel electrode. Zahner is my potentiostat. What is the right way to perform IR compensation? RS from OCP or RS with each potential step?
Well, first of all, are you implying that you're getting the uncompensated resistance from an OCP measurement? Because I'm not really sure how you would do that. But also, or are you trying to do an IR correction on an OCP measurement? Because that also doesn't make sense because I is 0 during an OCP measurement, so there is none. Fundamentally, the IR drop should not change as you step the potential. This is a fundamental property that is related to essentially the resistance between your working and reference electrodes. In the case of, I guess maybe the half cell, maybe if you have just 2 electrodes, maybe it can change. Just trying to think. Because if you have 2 electrodes, like if it's a half cell HER characterization, it might matter whether you have a reference electrode or not. If you don't have a reference electrode, the IR drop is just between the two electrodes you have, basically, something like that. It's still sort of fundamentally like the resistance in the electrolyte between the 2 electrodes. And in theory, that's not changing no matter what, whether you like the electrode resistance, the charge transfer resistance, the capacitive effects, the diffusional effects, all of those might be changing as you step the potential or change other parameters. But the uncompensated resistance in theory is unchanging. Maybe it changes with temperature or things like that, right? But basically, as you change the applied potential, sometimes experimentally you see some changes in the like leftmost intercept on your Nyquist plot, but in theory that shouldn't change based on your applied potential. So you should be able to, again, in theory, I know maybe in practice this isn't what you're finding, but in theory you should be able to measure, like before you start doing any potential steps or anything like that, measure the IR drop, measure the RU. You know, I don't know Zoner very well. I would assume they have some measurement in their software for measuring uncompensated resistance, or you just do an impedance experiment and take the high frequency x-axis intercept on the Nyquist plot, or take our method in our software, for instance, is to find the impedance magnitude at the lowest possible phase angle. It's another way to think about it. At high frequency, the phase angle that's closest to zero is representative of the uncompensated resistance. RHE 30 weight percent KOH, 70 C at high current densities, bubbles cause resistance. Consider ohmic. Well, if bubbles are causing resistance, that might be causing other problems too. So bubbles being there is going to interrupt the electrolyte electrode interface. You have more problems than just temporary high resistance. You have connection problems probably too. You know, if you're trying to do IR correction on your data at a bunch of applied potentials and the temperature staying the same, the electrolyte staying the same, I would stand by my statement that in theory, the amount of resistance to compensate for should not change throughout that process. You shouldn't have to measure it and compensate every time. You know, again, I can't speak for Zoner. I can only speak for Pine, for my company, but we have the ability to like script out a series of, you know, experiments where you, for instance, like measure the RU, do an IR corrected CV or amperogram, chronoamperogram or something, you know, whatever experiment, and then take RU again and then correct for that new value if it changed. Like you can script out that kind of a thing in our software. I have no clue if Zoner allows you to do something like that or not. You know, you can do that if you want, perhaps as something like a constant verification and remeasurement of the uncompensated resistance as you're doing an experiment. You know, it's like, well, if it is moving around or drifting ever so slightly for one reason or another, then remeasuring it and adjusting can be reasonable, I suppose.
Is this like a CV experiment though?
He said stepped potential, so it sounds like he's doing like chronoamperogram, like stepping, you know, like apply potential, measure the current, maybe it could be a
because sometimes
like a polarization curve or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and he has an RHE. So usually IR compensation, IR correction is primarily very useful when you're doing like a CV experiment because the current is dynamically changing. If you're applying a step potential.
So he says LSV with script, each potential step is held for 50 seconds.
Wait, so LSV with a script, each potential step is held.
So it's like a really slow LSV. You could think about it that way. It seems like he's like hold the potential for 50 seconds and then hold the potential 50 seconds and hold it and hold it. So it's like doing it's like a CV at, you know, like a microvolt a second.
All right,
so it's like a really slow scan CV.
It's really not okay, but it's really not CV. It's multiple step. It's multiple potential steps. Okay,
yeah,
that's fine. I understand that the solution resistance can change during, say, an electrolysis period, if you will, but because yeah, if you're electrolyzing something and you have high current densities, it's just the useful thing about IR compensation is that it can change. It's able to adjust the potential. Remember, IR compensation is ultimately about adjusting the applied potential to overcome solution resistance. So, if you're just stepping the potential, all you really need to do is just hold the potential at like a larger value, one that compensates for the amount of resistance and current that you're passing. So you don't even have to do IR compensation. You just have to apply a higher higher voltage. But of course, when you do if you turn IR compensation on, and I don't know how it's done in Zoner, as long as the resistance value is the same, then the applied potential, the current that's measured, will do some kind of feedback that adds more voltage to each potential step, because it sounds like you're just applying a step that's held for 50 seconds. So again, we don't have access to Zoner software. I'd ask one of their reps about how exactly to do it. So that's my understanding of kind of the situation. And it's not to say that you can't do it, but it's just, I think this is just clarifying the nature of the experiment. It's interesting to hold a potential step for like 50 seconds and do like multiple of those from one potential to another, which is fine for doing HER studies.
It's my understanding as well.
Yeah. There's a question after his, which was, in charge-discharge analysis of a battery, why do some galvanostats not allow measurements at negative potentials? Is it acceptable to set 0 volts as the lower potential limit?
No, probably not.
Probably
But
not.
it depends on what you're studying. Consider that volts is a relative quantity. So volts versus what? Versus Li plus versus NHE versus whatever. Now, some instruments, first of all, I don't know a lot of galvanostats that are galvanostats only. You're probably talking about a potentiostat galvanostat or some sort of, scientific instrument like that. There are instruments, for example, like fuel cell test stations that can study fuel cells. They are not potentiostats, but they operate like potentiostats. So for example, if you have a fuel cell, its standard theoretical maximum potential is about 1.23 volts. That's the oxygen reduction reaction potential, right? So the voltage of a fuel cell will be 1 volt or whatever, positive 1.2 volts, ideally. To get a polarization curve, speaking of like this LSV thing you're talking, you either sweep the potential or you step it slowly from 1 volt and you bring it down, right? Once you get below 0 volts, you will have to start applying energy. So the answer to your question, one of the answers might be because it isn't a proper galvanostat or potentiostat. It isn't actually a device that can provide the energy required to set the potential wherever you want. The reason why these test stations sometimes exist for fuel cells or sometimes for batteries is because they can draw the energy out of something, but they can't provide energy into it. So it's basically, call it a load box is kind of what they're called. So it basically, it's what it is. I'm getting a little more technical here, but so pardon me for that, but it's basically a variable resistor is what these basically are. So you could think about if I put my fuel cell or my battery and it's charged up or it can give me energy, whatever. A fuel cell is a better example because it's not really, it doesn't discharge, you don't discharge a fuel cell. It gives you energy as long as the fuel is flowing on either side of the anode and cathode. So you can imagine if I have a fuel cell and I have anode and cathode and I have an infinite resistance between the two, nothing will happen. I can't get anything out of it. But if I decrease the resistance between the anode and the cathode, electricity will start to flow. I'll start to get current to flow. I'll get the oxygen reduction reaction on one side. I'll get the hydrogen splitting on the other side. That's what a fuel cell does. So sometimes what you're seeing with this kind of a situation with these devices, and I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not, I really don't know, but it can discharge cells. It can discharge a battery. It can discharge a fuel cell, basically get energy out of it. But it can't go the other way. It can't provide energy into something. So sometimes that's the reason. I don't know if that's exactly what is the case with yours. The other possible explanation for this is that, again, I don't know if this is a half cell or it's a full battery. You said of a battery, so maybe I'm assuming it's a full battery, but like a lithium ion battery goes between 3 and 4.2 volts. So one of the reasons you wouldn't go to 0 volts is you would severely over discharge your battery and it would die. Now there might be batteries where they go from 0 to 1 volt different, like maybe an aqueous battery. I don't know. But this is an arbitrary question because 0 volts doesn't mean anything by itself. It only means something in the context of whatever system you're studying. So the answer for why you don't go below 0 volts is actually probably more to do with because that's the maximum discharge voltage of whatever battery you're studying. And if you go below that, whether the number happens to be negative or not, you're over discharging your battery, and then you're going to be in trouble. Like you're going to damage the system. So that might be, part of it as well. But again, without any specifics about it, with the system or anything else, that's the best that I can kind of answer that question for you.
Okay.
Chris had a comment about hypochlorite. I don't know really about that reaction either. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean,
that was just with the earlier question, but
yeah, I looked it up, but I don't know if I'd feel good going over it. I mean, it's just it's how they make bleach electrochemically with just salt and water, and they form hypochlorites and bleach and chlorine gas.
That was what I did in my webinar this past week. I mean, I did the reduction of bleach. I'm guessing if you go the other way, you can make bleach.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean? I want to find it. The hypochlorite's nice. I used it in my webinar on Wednesday. I want to pull up the reaction just so I can look at it and not speak out of my memory, which is likely not going to get it right. The hypochlorite reduction is like hypochlorite plus water and 2 electrons gives you chloride. Yeah. So basically, I'm assuming if you have an alkaline system with some hydroxide and chloride ions, you can form bleach by just oxidizing it. So maybe that's another thing that's happening. I don't know. And that probably convolutes things as well. Just again to that point, if that's an oxidation reaction and you have hydrogen gas being an oxidation reaction forming, is that an oxidation or it's a reduction? So maybe it isn't. I don't know. I might be confusing things here. So anyway, maybe at one of the electrodes, hypochlorite will form, and that could be, complicating things. But I guess we'll just leave it there.
There's a question about, let's see. So can you please make a video on how to put all electrochemical tests on Origin?
I'll get right on that.
Maybe it might take a very, very long time, but actually we don't have Origin. So if you want to give us Origin,
well,
then maybe
the other point to make about this is neglecting Origin, because I followed up with this person and they wanted to see how to do IR correction on Origin. And I said, I don't have Origin, but I have Excel. I can show you how to do manual IR correction in Excel. I can do that in a moment. But to the main point of your question, like this is too big of a question, but we have a lot of videos and webinars on our YouTube channel on some of these things. We have 120 to 130 episodes of this very podcast we're doing right here. YouTube has if you go into that playlist, you can search for stuff. I think search for TAFL, you'll find
that's
15
right.
At this point in time, it's probably 15 to 30 different episodes where I've shown how to do TAFL analysis. I have an RRDE webinar in our webinars playlist where I talk about how to do TAFL analysis. You have multiple videos on CV, including a 4-part voltammetry series. I'm quite literally in the middle of a 5-part series on impedance. So all of the things that you have mentioned, we have a lot of videos on already. So I can promise you there will be no such video that is encompassing all of the things that you've asked for, because it would be 900 hours long. We have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to look through the webinars playlist, look through these Ask Us Anything About Electrochemistry. All the episodes have timestamps and descriptions of all the questions that were asked. And you can search through those, I believe, and search for TAFL, search for impedance, search for whatever sort of suits you, you're looking to know about, and you'll find an episode where we've talked about it, I believe. So to that question there. But to your other question, you had asked how to do IR correction. And again, I can show you in my company's software, and I can show you in Excel. So I said I can. I don't have Origin, but I can show you how to do this in Excel. So I will do that now. So first is I have some data in my company software Aftermath here. So this is some CVs that I did some time ago. This is a normal looking ferrocene CV. Very nice, very pretty looking duck, no problems. But then I did one where I like specially diluted it really badly, and I made it look really bad on purpose. Okay, so this is my data of really, I guess it was 1 millimolar TBA PF6. So this is like 1 millimolar of supporting electrolyte. So I made it like super bad just so I could, do this illustration. So let me open up Excel. I know you can't see it yet, but I'll get there. I'm just getting it ready. So what I'm going to do is also show you that if I'm doing IR correction, I need the IR drop. So what I did is an uncompensated resistance test, and I got 6 kilo ohms, 6.06 kilo ohms. Okay. So that was my uncompensated resistance. Now, part of this is to say that when I use IR compensation in the software, it corrects it out like for you. Now it's not perfect looking because this was like an extreme example. This was like crazy high impedance, but you can see that I've basically brought my peak splitting from like 5 billion volts down to about, well, it's still a little too high, but it made it better. So doing IR correction can make your duct look more normal. But if you don't have the ability to do that, you can do it in software manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these data here, copy these points. I'll come to Excel now and show you how to do it manually. All right, so I'm going to paste these points here. All right, so this is voltage or potential, I should say. I'm back in battery mode. Potential in volts. This is current in amps. Okay, so what I need is, this is the RU, and this is it was like 6061. That's I'll put RU in ohms. All right, so that's ohms. So what I need to do, let me just move this over a little bit, give myself some room. IR, that is the IR drop. That's what I need. So what's IR? Well, that's current times resistance. So what I need is a IR corrected. So that's E minus IR. That's what I want in volts. So what I'm doing is at every point of potential, I'm subtracting current times the resistance. That's all it is. So this column, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see, right? So here's my potential column. There's my current column. And I need to create an E versus IR. This is an IR correction. I'm subtracting that uncompensated resistance. So this column is equal to whatever the current is, what the potential minus whatever the current is times the resistance. I'm going to freeze the resistance column so it stays there. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's literally it. And so now that whole column is the IR corrected. And as the current is small, there isn't much correction. When the current is big, there's a bigger correction, right? And so if I make a plot of that, I'm going to zoom back out because now I can't see anything. Let me do this quicker. So if I make this plot right here, this is my uncompensated resistance plot. Sorry, my raw data plot with the RU basically, right? Now I'm going to add the IR. I'm going to change it to the IR corrected potential, but I'm going to leave the current the same. So now I'm going to create a second data set to show you. This is the IR corrected data. So you can see that it looks kind of like the one that I showed in the software before. So I've corrected this manually. Okay, so that's how you would do this. Now you can see that it doesn't line up perfectly. And there's other reasons I could talk about with that, with IR drop. When you do it this way, you have now an unstable CV. It messes with the actual scan rate, but it is a way to correct after the fact. You're just making this E minus IR column, and that's your corrected voltage or potential, if you will. I keep saying voltage. It's your corrected potential. So I hope that's clear. Let me know if you,
said, but we don't need to convert volts to RHE and convert milliamp. So
it doesn't matter. All of that is,
Oh, yeah.
all of that is
it's nice to keep the units correct,
Yeah.
but technically
So-
it would just scale it.
So current times resistance equals potential, right? I times R is equal to potential. It doesn't matter if I have it in milliamps or amps. Like current in amps times resistance in ohms equals potential in volts. If my current column was in milliamps and I multiply milliamps by ohms, I'm just going to get millivolts. Like
Yeah.
there's what you're talking about is arbitrary. I could have multiplied the current column by 1,000, absolutely, and gotten milliamps. It doesn't matter. What I'm telling you is you're not wrong. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't. I can change to millivolts or milliamps or microamps or picoamps. It doesn't make any difference. I just kept it in volts and amps to keep everything like straight SI units, to be clear. But you can make all of that change. And the potential axis, and in my case, I actually have no idea what I was using. It might have been a silver chloride. I actually don't even know. It could have been a silver,
if it's ferrocene, it's
silver
probably
wire.
it's probably versus
Yes.
silver wire.
So you'd say versus Ag plus. So if I were to correct this to RHE, I would just, I don't even know what it would be.
Add whatever the potential is.
Yeah, I would add whatever the Ag plus.
Subtract.
So I would just literally move the entire, that would be another addition to the E axis. I have my E minus IR. I would just add 200 millivolts to it or whatever the heck the value is. And then I would have versus RHE. Like all of those are trivial. The shape and the style of the plot you're getting would not change. So there's that. And then to this point, should IR should be 100%. You read it should be 80 to 90%. What I just showed you, that does not apply. The only reason you apply 80 to 90% of IR drop is when you do it during the experiment, because you prevent oscillations that way. The instrument will likely oscillate and give you noisy data or completely oscillate out of control if you try to compensate on a particularly capacitive system at 100%. We do that for practical reasons. If you're calculating it after the fact, you can just use the number because you're not going to cause your system to oscillate in Excel. Excel is not going to go and go crazy. It's going to be just fine. So that 80 to 90%, again, is only during the collection of the experiment if you have IR compensation in your CV or LSV, like while collecting the data. After the fact, just use the number. Use 100%.
Okay. We're getting some comments back, and we got about 15 minutes ish. The remainder of the live stream. There's this question, which is, if 2 points are at the same potential, are there any electric field lines connecting them?
Oh, man.
So assuming,
No?
I think assuming that this isn't a trick question, and it's like, oh, I have a dot here and here, and then I have other things like in the way. If those things are, if it's not that, then you're just talking about 2 points at the same potential. I think the answer is no. There is no electric field, because there's no electric field lines connecting them. And another way to kind of think about this is if there are 2 points at the same potential. Another way to think about it is it requires no energy to move a particle between, or a charged species between those 2 points, right? Like we say a metal or a thing is conductive. Like basically, if something is conductive, its potential across that entire thing is exactly the same, which means it doesn't cost any energy for a charged species to move across anywhere. It's conductive, which means there's no energy it's required. That means
an electron can move
electrons
across the surface, let's say, of a piece of silver with no energy required.
Yeah. And so if the potentials are different, that means there is energy required to move the particle from point A to point B. So 2 points that have the same potential, technically that means that there's no energy required to move one thing from point A to point B. So in that case, there wouldn't be a field line. That's the way I interpret the question. Maybe I'm missing something, but that's my 2 cents.
I think your answer is technically correct, and there could be situations like you said where there's
It's a trick question. Here's
there's
it's on a hill. It loops around, but
it's actually the net potential,
yeah.
but whatever. Yeah. Strictly speaking, 2 points, ideally, blah blah blah. Then your answer is no.
Yeah.
I like how you say it like you're mad at the question.
Yeah.
You're mad at your own possible answer. Like, oh, there's a hell of potential.
Yeah, someone's
you're like angering yourself.
Yeah, I'm angry at myself.
I love it. It's funny.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh boy, someone else is asking about my meme.
Yeah. Well, his first one to say, what does it mean? It's just I don't always do EIS, but when I do, it's always versus OCP, and then I wonder why my results are pointless.
So this comes from my constant frustration at people asking me, what potential should I do impedance at? The question annoys me so much that I keep getting it. that I keep getting this question, and then I make a meme about it, and then I still get the question. So, do you want to link to the short again? Maybe I don't know.
It's like it's already in the
thing,
but
if you scroll up in the YouTube chat, Alex put a link to a YouTube short that I made about what potential should I pick for impedance.
Yeah, and granted, I only just put the link. I didn't put what it is.
Yeah, it's a YouTube short. So that's just what it is. I get this question a lot, and I think it frustrates me because I don't think people are thinking critically when they ask this question. Like if I ask you, if you say you're going to study some process like the ferrocene CV I just showed a minute ago, and it's like that little duct shows up at it's like 200 millivolts or whatever it is, right? Okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you oh well, I need you to do CV. And it's like, why? Well, I want to study the ferrocene reaction. And it's like, all right, well, I want to do CV to study ferrocene. So if I asked you well, what potential are you going to pick? And you'd say well, I know it happens at 200. So let me go minus, 100 to plus 400. I'll scan over that range, whatever. Right. And I'll hit it. I'll see the potential at which my peaks are happening. I'll see the potential at which, the duck happens, right? And then I tell you, well, your OCP is 500. And you're like, well, I don't care what my OCP is. I want to see the ferrocene duck, so I'm going to scan to 0. Don't tell me what my OCP is. I don't care what my OCP is. If I just do CV at OCP, I'm not going to see a duck. My results are going to be meaningless, hence pointless. If I did so somehow when you switch to impedance, all of that logic just goes right out the window. You switch to impedance and you're like, well, I'm going to study ferrocene. What potential would I pick? It's like OCP. It's 500. Well, yeah, but you're not going to see anything at 500. The reduction happens at 200. Yeah, but OCP. That's what I should use. I'm going to use OCP. And it's just I want to tear my hair out. It's like, why aren't you thinking the same way? If you want to study the ferrocene reaction at 200, then pick 200 as your baseline. Why are you asking this question? Pick a potential where it's happening. It's the same thing. There's no difference.
This is great. This guy is just like, oh, I thought it was some famous quote from a legendary scholar like
No,
Alan
it's not
Barr.
a famous quote. It's my annoyance. And there might be something that this live stream might be better when I'm a little angry. There might be something to that. It's more entertaining. I know we're not really. This is entertainment in some sense, but we're trying to be helpful, but
educational. It'll teach you guys some stuff.
I'm not under a delusion that it might be better if I'm a little mad. You guys probably all laugh at me. It's fine. I don't care. I can take it. I have thick skin. But you just you got me going with my irritation of this, and I had to make a meme to do it, and then you got me going again. But no, it's not a famous quote, unfortunately. It's just this. If you're not familiar with this guy, this is from an ad for some beer. What is it? It's a beer. I don't drink beer. I have no idea. It's a guy who's in beer commercials, and he's like
the most
Dos Equis. That's what it is. Yeah. The ad is he's the most interesting man in the world, and he just goes, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I drink this one. And it's just so
it's become a meme.
It's become a meme. So it's I don't always blank.
Yeah.
But when I do blank, so it's just that's the meme.
That's the meme.
That's the meme. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you for your question. Thank you for getting me rolling on
Yeah.
my stupid annoyance, electrochemistry annoyance, but I hope it was at least entertaining. for
From
you.
now on, whenever there's like a quote, I'm gonna say like, famous Jean Michel, what is it? Savant said,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, should I do manual IR
Yeah.
compensation or not? It's just like,
As the famous Alexander Frumkin once said, stop doing manual IR compensation. Do it during the experiments.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
right.
as yeah, as Frederick Bunsen once said,
Yeah.
only compensate for 80%, you doofus. You know.
Yeah. Albert Einstein. I need to get these papers out for my next, so I can get so I can get this this grant.
It's like
That's why I'm doing this.
it's like the fake quotes. It's like, I remember like in the
Yeah.
early days of the internet, it was like, you shouldn't believe everything you see on the internet, Abraham Lincoln. you
Yeah.
know? It's like, it's phenomenal.
Let's see one comment here from Provence, like, no, the system again about IR correction.
So
I'm
he's
doing it manually after you scan.
So it's probably like I just showed you. You're just subtracting the IR from the potential.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this is a Zonner thing. You need to, we don't know how Zonner implements IR correction into their potentiostats. So you need to ask them, given the waveform that you're applying, how do you do that? Because there's no reason, like with your conditions, I don't see a reason why you need to be manually doing this IR correction. In fact, it almost sounds like you're also intentionally doing a weird kind of slow, pulse experiment, because it's not automatically compensating with a IR correction. It's a circuit, like it's part of the circuit, and the software should be able to access that. So I would talk to them. That's kind of my 2 cents on that, because I don't think we can help you any more than just because we're not familiar with it. But
I have an answer for this next one too, actually, even though it's not my company. I know what you're talking about here. If this is the question was related, I mentioned some things about load boxes and other things. I actually thank you for clarifying. You're using a biologic BCS 815. It doesn't allow you to set negative potential limits. Why is this possible in others like the VSP 300? Because this system is not symmetrical. I'm just looking at a quick spec for the BCS series, and to a certain extent, the answer also is you should check with biologic, but the voltage of this system appears to be from 0 to 9 volts. So a lot of times with potentiostats, galvanized, like actual potentiostat systems, it'll have a plus or minus 10 volt range, or plus or minus whatever, which means it goes from minus 10 to plus 10, or minus 5 to plus 5. That's usually how potentiostats work. And I believe the VSP 300 is a similar thing. It has plus or minus whatever its potential range is. Okay. There is actually nothing that necessitates a potentiostat company from making the ranges, the terms are bipolar and symmetrical. So it's bipolar, meaning it goes to plus 10 and minus 10, and it's symmetrical. It goes to 10 at both sides. That's 20 volts. There's power elements in the potentiostat that enable 20 volts to be measured. There's no reason why that has to be minus 10 to plus 10. We just do that commonly as companies because it encompasses a wide range for a variety of applications. But batteries primarily never need negative voltages. They just don't. They don't usually need it, because often negative voltage means it's an over discharge situation. So a lot of cases, which appears to be the one with the BCS 800 series in biologic, is that they just shift that range to start at 0. I don't know, whatever on screen, maybe this way. So it starts at 0 and goes to 9 or 10 or 50 or whatever. But the lower limit of your system is 0 fundamentally. The voltage range on that system is not bipolar, and it is not symmetrical. So that's the reason. Sometimes the systems, they allow like -2 to 9, they give slight in the negative to allow for that. But most of the time they don't, because you don't need negative voltages usually with batteries. You might be in an odd, I can't speak because I don't know about your specific system. maybe you have a real need to go to a negative voltage, but most times in batteries you don't. And so that's why they do that. So that's the reason you can't go negative. It's biologics system. It's what it's designed for.
Yeah. We are basically out of time. I did make a note of some of the questions that were asked right at the very end about deconvoluting, a CV into multiple electron steps, and about AC and DC.
Yeah, we can talk about
we can talk about that probably not next week. It'll probably be a few weeks.
Yeah,
actually.
it's going to be a few weeks. Next week we're out, and then the week
yeah.
after that we're out too. And I think the week after that we're back. So it's like 3 weeks from now, unfortunately. Hope you guys can survive without us.
Yeah. But I think it's also one thing we can say is this guy's like, who are you guys?
This is a really good question.
It's a good question. We haven't actually introduced ourselves.
No, you know what? I don't know that we need to, because I think that this is really just like, I think this is like a fundamental psychology. Like who are any of us really? You know? Who is anybody?
I was thinking this actually just reminded me of Star Fox, where the guy's like, "Who are you guys?" And it's like, "We're Star Fox," and it's from this video game back in.
All
like,
I think about Star
2000s.
Fox is Slippy.
Yeah, that's right, Slippy.
Everybody hates Slippy.
Everybody hates Slippy.
Every time you have to go save Slippy because stupid Slippy gets himself killed or
yes,
caught or whatever.
yeah, that's right.
It's like, you know what? Am I allowed to just not care about Slippy?
Yeah,
seriously, that takes me back. I used to love Star Fox. That was a great game.
It is a great game.
Who are we? We are PhD electrochemists who work for a company in the United States, and we like to answer your questions about electrochemistry every Friday.
We try.
We try. That's who we are, though. There's other deeper existential answers for who we are. And I suspect over the next 2 weeks of absence, until we meet again, we will all ponder those questions of who we are, and we'll think about them. And when we meet up in 2 or 3 weeks, we will have answers together for who we are. This is so stupid.
I know. I was just saying, we're electrochemists, electrochemical engineers. We're Pine Research.
I just wanted to end it on the dumbest possible note. I already made it dumb by talking about all kinds of weird stuff in Star Fox now.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my fault.
Well, no, that was fun, though. That took me back, too. I like that game. Well, in any case, as we said, it will be a few weeks. I guess if I look at the calendar, it looks like the 27th of March appears to be the day that we'll be back.
I think I should be back by then. Yeah.
ACS
is right before that. So,
so it'll be a few weeks. But anyway, I hope everybody has a great rest of your March, I guess.
Yeah.
Until then. And thank you as always, everybody, for your questions. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.